Hey guys, Andrew Henderson from Nomad Capitalist in Bali. Wanted to make a little video for you about the first step you should take when you're trying to figure out, should I move overseas? Should I move my company overseas? Should I get a second passport? Should I prepare a plan B that uses international strategies like what we talk about at Nomad Capitalist? And I want to do this because there's been so much news recently that has people ignoring this one step at their own peril. And that news has included Brexit, it's included the Trump election, it's the stuff that Trump is doing as president. And a lot of people are freaked out by a lot of stuff, and people are going out and making decisions or thinking that they're making decisions by ignoring this one step. Now, if you've watched any of my videos, you know that I'm a big believer in taking action. I always talk about taking action, and not just taking action, but taking abundant action, really leaping into the idea of taking action, trusting the right experts. But before you can do that, there's one thing that you have to consider. And this is kind of the missing ingredient that a lot of folks skip over when they get emotional by some of the things that surround them in their life, and they just want to get to a solution, even if that solution doesn't help them, or even if they don't need a solution at all. And what I would call that missing step is resolving the conflict. I'll give you an example. After Donald Trump got elected, after Brexit happened, after some crazy stuff happened in India, NomadCapitalist.com got a big spike in traffic. I'll take Trump as an example. I think 10 to 12 times the normal traffic for a couple days after Trump got elected. I remember sitting there on election night and just watching as all these people flooded onto the website looking for, namely for, how do I become a second citizen somewhere else quickly so I can get out of the U.S.? And, as we talk about in other videos, what those folks didn't necessarily understand was maybe you don't need a second citizenship to go and live somewhere else. Maybe there's a different strategy, but you don't know what strategy you need, therefore you're chasing the wrong strategy. But the step that those folks, and the Brexit folks, and the other folks skipped over, and that many folks skip over, is resolving the conflict, which is figuring out what's going on, what problem do I have to solve, and do I really need to solve this problem? And, whenever I'm looking at a situation, I say, what's the worst case scenario that could happen? What's the best case scenario to happen? And what's the most likely scenario that can happen? Can I live with the worst? What happens if the best happens? And how do I ensure or prepare for the most likely scenario? And by going through that process of resolving the conflict and not just focusing on the emotions, actually diving in and figuring out what is going on and what do you need to do, you will oftentimes come to the resolution that you don't need to know much of anything. For example, I have so many people blowing up my inbox on social media, sending messages to my team at Nomad Capitalist. All kinds of messages are coming to us. Oh, hey man, I gotta get out of here. I'm living in Chicago and it's really getting bad and I'm freaking out. If they took a step back and resolved the conflict, they might realize, hey, they don't like what's happening, but the most likely scenario is not much is going to happen. And I'm not saying that based on any particular event. I'm simply saying resolve the conflict before you make a decision. And so when it comes to what we do at Nomad Capitalist, this is why I have an application process to screen out 98 or 99% of people who want to talk to me. Not because I want to be difficult, but because I have spent the last 5 years of the 10 years I've been doing this resolving the conflict and knowing exactly where I want to go. And so working with folks who are any less resolved in their conflict not only hurts me, but it hurts them. So, for example, after Trump got elected, got a lot of people who said, oh, Andrew, I want to work with you. People who've never been to our site before, probably don't agree with what a lot of I have to say. And they said, I'm freaked out. Trump's elected. It's going to be horrible. And remember, my operations girl said, I looked at all the applications that came in like the 3 weeks after Trump got elected in November of 2016. If they said they were from the United States, up at the top, I scrolled down to the bottom. Are you willing to invest in yourself? Are you willing to take the process seriously? Are you willing to really jump in right now, not tomorrow, not the next day? And she said, if it was United States citizen and then no at the bottom, she's like, I knew they were freaked out about Trump. I just tossed it in the heap of rejected applications. Because think about it. If you're coming on to a website and you're saying, I think Donald Trump is the next Hitler and he's going to put us all in buses and do something and take us somewhere really bad, and I need to escape before that happens. And then you scroll down, you keep answering some questions. Okay, emotion, and then you scroll down to the bottom. Oh, okay, you want to spend a few bucks? No, absolutely not. if you were offered some help, what would you do? I'd research it. I'd check out some other blogs. I'd call my friend. I'd ask my mother what she would recommend. The conflict hasn't been resolved. If there's not an immediate need for you to do something and you can't resolve that conflict and actually resolve the action that you're suggesting ought to be taken with the action that you're willing to take, there's a conflict that you have to figure out what's going on. And this is what held me back for probably half the time I've been doing this. Almost 10 years I've been researching and trying to do this offshore stuff. Half the time I've been getting results, and the last 3 years that I've really resolved the conflicts, it's just been supercharged results. Because I've realized I have a mission. I know where I want to be, and therefore I've resolved everything in my own mind, and I can take a clear path. And when an opportunity presents itself, I say yes or I say no, and I continue down the path. If you're saying, hey man, if you're doing what I did 7 years ago, 8 years ago, and saying, hey man, I'm tired of paying, 6-figure tax bill, and the guy says, hey, for 15 grand I can solve that problem, and you swear at him, you haven't resolved the conflict. You're not ready. And so likewise, if you think something really bad is going to happen, but you're not willing or ready to take the action, if you're not, if it's all about, I need to be in control, I have to make sure I get the best passport, I have to call, I have to do so many different things, then it's probably an indication that, the emergency emotional status that you're in isn't matching up with the action that you're willing to take. The few times that I've had really big problems with my business, I took action that same day. I called someone who could help, and I said, great, how much is it going to cost? I'm sending you the money right now, because I wanted the problem solved right away. Most situations aren't emergencies, and so I think that going through the process of what's the best case, the worst case, the most likely case scenario, and going from there, resolving the conflict in your own mind, figuring out what needs to be done, do I need to do anything, and going from there. This is the process that's why I'm more supportive of my family forever than for staying in the United States. I used to try and convince my family to move somewhere else. Now I've realized they've resolved the conflict. After years of discussing moving overseas, they've resolved the conflict, and for them the U.S. is the best place. And so now they have no more conflict. They made a decision. They took action by not taking action. You can go through that same process, and whether you decide that moving overseas or moving your company overseas or getting that second passport is more important than not, or whether you decide the other way, that's okay. But no one else can resolve the conflict for you. I can't convince you to do it. No one else can convince you to do it. You have to do that inner work yourself.